Iraq News highlights and points to ponder Thursday a.m. June 20, 24. Listen to the full version on the official dinarreport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Kurdistan Federation. Legislating the oil and gas law will resolve the disputes between Baghdad and Erbil. June 19, 1658 Information, private. The spokesperson for the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan Parliamentary Bloc, Suzanne Mansur, said on Wednesday that legislating the oil and gas law would be sufficient to resolve the disputes and outstanding issues between Baghdad and Erbil. Mansur said in an interview with the Maluma agency that the oil and gas issue has been stuck between Baghdad and Erbil for many years, noting that recourse to the constitution lies in legislating the oil and gas law. She added the draft oil and gas law is still with the government and we are waiting for the law to be enacted in the House of Representatives, noting that approving the law would regulate the relationship between Baghdad, Erbil, and the oil-producing provinces. She continued, "There is a committee formed by both sides in Baghdad and Erbil to solve all problems, including the oil and gas law." An employee at the agricultural bank in Mason was arrested and seized 131 million dinars. Posted on June 20, 2024 by Sotel Iraq, the Federal Integrity Commission announced the implementation of an operation during which an employee at a government bank in Mason Governorate was arrested for seizing an amount of 131 million dinars from one of the bank's customers. The authority said in a statement that the authority's Mason Investigation Office formed a working team from its staff, explaining that the team that moved to the Agricultural Cooperative Bank Mason branch was able to execute an arrest warrant for one of the employees because he, in collaboration with other employees of the bank, seized more than from 131 million dinars from a customer's account in the bank. The authority added in its statement that the process of withdrawing the amount from the customer's current account at the bank took place without his knowledge. After forging his signatures and seizing his funds deposited for the accused's account, in conjunction with other employees, noting that the process was carried out in accordance with the provisions of Article 316 of the Penal Code. She confirmed that a formal arrest report was prepared for the operation, and it was presented with the accused to the judge of the investigative court competent to look into integrity issues in Mason to issue the appropriate decision. A reality that cannot be hidden behind everything about the secrets of electricity and its chronic disease in Iraq. Baghdad today. Baghdad every summer season, Iraqis get used to facing the deterioration and failure of the electrical sector in Iraq. And while the matter was often justified by the lack of fuel and the interruption of Iranian gas, the deterioration of supply this season compared to the previous season increased the puzzle about the secret behind the deterioration of electricity, especially since gas Iranian production continues and current production is greater than last year's production, but the level of processing has declined. Baghdad Today interviewed the current Undersecretary of the Ministry of Electricity and the former Acting Minister of Electricity, Adil Karim, about the secrets behind the deterioration of electrical equipment, and his speech was not devoid of pessimism and the reality imposed by the language of numbers that cannot be escaped or hidden behind. Karim said in an interview with Baghdad Today, noting that the improvement in the living conditions in Iraq has caused the demand to increase annually by 2,000 megawatts. He explains, in the past, the Iraqis relied on refrigerants, which at best did not draw more than 3 to 4 amps, while currently, due to the improvement in the living condition, they rely on splitters and refrigeration devices that consume about 12 amps. Karim adds, Iraq's current production amounts to more than 25,000 megawatts, while the demand this year amounts to 50,000 megawatts to provide Iraqis with electricity for 24 hours. Noting that the shortage amounts to 25,000 megawatts, meaning that the demand is twice the production. Currently, he talks about starting a very ambitious program represented by building thermal, combined and gas stations and repairing the stations that were damaged in the battles of the terrorist ISIS. While all of these problems are not new, but rather old, Karim adds, regarding the direct cause behind the latest crisis during this summer, by saying, it came because of the distribution networks. As the feeders began to operate beyond their capacity, as the feeder previously had a load of 5 megawatts. But due to urban development, expansion, and building construction, nutrients began to be unable to keep up with this expansion, and we now have major problems with these nutrients. In addition, He points out that, at the beginning of summer, many units and lines were disconnected due to high temperatures, and we had many of these problems. Regarding the impact of summer, Karim explains, in the times of the spring and autumn equinox, our need ranges between 11 and 14,000 megawatts only, but in the summer it jumps to 50,000 megawatts. Karim does not blame the citizen alone for using splits, noting that climate change plays a major role in the expansion of the use of air conditioning devices, as Iraq is the fifth country most affected by climate change around the world. The Undersecretary of the Ministry points out that the delay in non-approval of budgets in 2020 and 2022, and the absence of investment budgets, led to a delay in the ministry's plans to keep pace with demand, and stopped many projects to increase production, in addition to the ISIS war, as the terrorist organization caused Iraq to lose approximately 6,000 megabytes watts of production, but now work is underway in Beji, Anbar, and the thermal stations in Mosul, Akkaz, and Kirkuk. Regarding the crisis of the fuel needed to operate the stations, which is gas, Karim explains that Iraq is a country rich in liquid fuel, so the trend is now towards building thermal stations, not gas, and in the coming years they will enter service, which contributes to production not being affected if the imported gas stops. Jacobson, Professor, Romanovsky. A clear expression of a new American strategy in Iraq, urgent. Baghdad Today, Wednesday, June 19, 2024. Political affairs researcher Muhammad Ali al-Hakim revealed the most prominent tasks of the new American ambassador to Iraq, Tracy Jacobson, during the next phase, confirming the existence of a new strategy for the American administration in the country. Al-Hakim said in an interview with Baghdad Today that the tension and attraction between the new American ambassador extraordinary in Iraq, Tracy Jacobson, on the one hand, and the factions, on the other hand, confirms the existence of a new strategy for the American administration in Iraq, and Jacobson is of higher rank and experience than Romanovsky, the current ambassador, and will be ambassador extraordinaire, meaning she has the freedom to make decisions without referring to Washington, and she also has the right to conclude agreements in the name of the state. Specifically, Jacobson served in the White House and also contributed to drawing important strategies related to American national security and the president's decisions. She is considered a mentor to former American ambassador Romanovsky in terms of work, experience, and powers assigned to it. He explained that Washington's goal to appoint such an ambassador, in this sensitive circumstance, carries with it many hidden and encrypted messages and connotations that will become clear little by little in the Independent. The most prominent of which is targeting armed factions and curbing the parties that stood in opposition to the Iraqi governments and that targeted American interests and to limit their activities in the region, specifically in Iraq. He added, Washington also wants to limit the activity of armed factions externally, which have become a source of nuisance to the Israeli entity, as well as target Iranian interests in Iraq, the real supporter of the factions, and completely stop Iranian activity and target Iran's allies in order to be a card for U.S. President Biden to maneuver with during the U.S. elections. After the normalization card between Saudi Arabia and Israel, as well as the peace process and the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine, in the near future, have disappeared. The speech of U.S. Ambassador Tracy Jacobson, who will soon be appointed to Iraq, sparked a governmental and political reaction because of its determination to overthrow Iranian interests in the country, starting with energy and ending with support for armed factions. Listen to the full version on the official DinarReport.com website and become our supporter on Patreon. Source: Dinar Recaps.